Hi everybody, welcome back to Political Excess. Today, let's take our final look at the generic congressional ballot before Election Day. There's going to be a few more of these polls that come out over the next few days, but we probably have enough data to take a look at it, so let's get on Real Clear Politics and see where things stand. And right now, in the aggregate, the Republicans are ahead 3 points, 47.9 to 44.9. So that's a bit of an uptick for the Republicans over the last month. Most of that was over the last couple of weeks. It's definitely different than what it was a couple of months ago when Democrats had an advantage. But let's look at some of these individual polls. Most of them are using likely voters, except for Quinnipiac, News Nation, Politico, and Wall Street Journal. They are still using registered voters for whatever reason. And all of these polls show an advantage for Republicans except for two of them. The YouGov poll shows a tie at 49 apiece, and this Politico poll shows the Democrats with a 5-point lead. They definitely seem to be an outlier for whatever reason, but Politico and Morning Consult, they have consistently shown the Democrats with an advantage in most of their polls throughout the entire year. The best two for Republicans are Trafalgar, that has a 6-point advantage for them, and Rasmussen has a 7-point advantage. Also down here, this Monmouth poll has another 6-point lead for the Republicans. You can make a case that there's going to be biases within all these polls. I understand that. But what does seem to be clear is that Republicans are going into this midterm with an advantage. Not a substantial advantage, but enough of an advantage. And there's enough that's unknown to where this could be a lot bigger than it appears, or it could end up being smaller. But let's go down here and take a look at the graph. And it was just a few weeks ago the Republicans shot up. That could be for a variety of reasons. Voters are starting to pay attention. The economy is really hitting people. Maybe Democrats are not having the right kind of messaging. All of those are probable factors. And this is why I always say it doesn't matter what was happening 6 months ago or even 2 months ago. Republicans had a lead for most of the year, then Democrats got the momentum back, and they even had a slight edge. And people were talking about a blue wave. But that only would have mattered if Election Day were held on those days. Politics are fickle, and things change, and they have changed again. And now it is changing just in time for the Republicans. There's not much time left for things to change back. I think the only real question is at this point is how much of a red wave is it going to be? Is it going to just be a ripple, or is it actually going to be a tidal wave? Well, I think in the House it's clear that the Republicans are going to gain that chamber. The Senate, of course, that is unclear, but the Republicans more and more do seem like they're going to be favored to win that. Let's switch over to 538 and see what they have, and they have the Republicans only ahead 1.4%, 46.4 to 45. So that is a little bit narrower for the Republicans, but that's still going to be enough for the Republicans to make some decent gains, even if it only was a 1.4% advantage. And as I like to do sometimes, let's get back on Real Clear Politics and compare to the 2020 generic congressional vote. And that had, in the aggregate, the Democrats leading 6.8%, but the final results were 3.1%. So that is a 3.7% bias in favor of the Democrats. 1 or 2 points, not a huge deal. It's going to be tough to pinpoint it exactly. But now you're getting into the 3 or 4 points, that actually starts to become a problem. If we go down here and take a look at the graph, there's not much change here. The Democrats maintained a lead the entire year, and Republicans were on the bottom. So no surprises in this election. It's just that it can undermine confidence in future polls. How about back in 2018, that big blue wave? Well, that had Democrats ahead 7.3% in the aggregate. They actually won by 8.4%. So that is a 1.1% bias in favor of the Republicans this time. So it's nothing substantial, but it is a slight bias. And if we go down here and take a look at that graph, it was a fairly steady lead for the Democrats the entire year again. Nothing really changed at the end, no surprises, and the Democrats had a nice big wave. How about back in 2016? Well, that had Democrats ahead 0.6%, but the Republicans actually won that 1.1%. So that is close to a 2% bias in favor of the Democrats. And if we go down here and take a look at that graph, the Democrats were ahead the entire year again. Even on November 1st, they had a 3.7% lead. Right after that, at the very end, Republicans shot up. They got to almost even on the graph and in the aggregate, and that still underestimated Republican support as they were able to win that popular vote. And let's look at one more of these. Back in 2014, the Republicans were favored to win by 2.4%. They actually won by 5.7. That's a 3.3% bias in favor of the Democrats. And if we go down here and look at that graph, this one was back and forth, neck and neck for most of the year. Democrats did have a slight lead close to Election Day. but in September, Republicans did shoot up and they never let go of that lead. So there's some similarities between that and this year, where the Republicans did shoot up pretty late. And I understand there's going to be polls all over the place. That's why it's great to look at it in the aggregate. If there's one or two outliers, it shouldn't really affect the overall result too much. However, if there is an industry-wide polling failure, that's where the real problem comes in. And that has happened especially over the last few election cycles. It's happened more in certain states. It's usually happened in favor of the Democrats, where it undersamples Republican support, and that's what everybody is unsure about in this particular election. So what is the conclusion here? Well, Republicans do seem to have everything going for them at the right time. It doesn't appear to be a massive red wave, but enough of a red wave where they're going to have some nice gains in the House and probably in the Senate. I don't know how much of the shy Trump vote, the shy Republican vote, whatever you want to call it, I'm not sure how much of that there's going to be. I would guess there'll be a little bit of it, and some of these pollsters are just unable to pick up that part of the electorate. If they are off again by 3 or 4 points, the polling industry as a whole is going to have its credibility probably broken beyond repair. Certain individual pollsters are going to be able to claim victory if they were right on the money, and it's also possible that they're undersampling Democratic support this time. That's a possibility. Or maybe the polls in the aggregate are pretty close to being right on target this time, less than a point off. But based on how things look now, I would expect the Republicans to probably win at least 20 seats in the House. That's not that bold of a prediction. That's pretty much what everybody else is saying. I would have to say, even on a bad night now, they're going to pick up at least 15 seats. Could they get to 30 seats? Yeah, that's on the table at this point, but I would think that's going to be a little bit tougher to do because they already almost have the majority at this point, so there's less territory for them to conquer. But some type of gain in the 20s is probably the best bet at this point. I've seen some people say they're going to pick up 40 seats. I would have to say that seems very unlikely, but I can't totally rule it out until the polling has corrected itself and until the results reflect those polls. And then there's always a couple of Democratic insiders that say that they're going to hold the House. There's no way that's happening either. The Republicans are winning this House 99.9%. The size of the majority is the only thing in question, and in the Senate, Republicans are looking at a maximum of 54 seats, and it seems like a bad night for them at this point would be a 50-50 tie where they technically don't win control of the Senate. What seems most likely at this point is probably a 51 to 52 seat majority for the Republicans. But that's just a superficial take. There's plenty of unknowns. Even when we see the polls come out for a given race in a given state, if it's only a 1 or 2 point advantage for somebody, it could go the other way still. That's definitely possible. There's always going to be 1 or 2 upsets that people didn't see coming. But as I always say, it's going to be fascinating to watch. I will have some of my prediction videos coming out over the next few days. But as for the generic congressional ballot, how many seats do you think the Republicans will pick up in the House and how many in the Senate? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoy this channel, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next video.